The angels have a profound message for you today. It is one that comes at a time of healing, self-discovery, and newfound strength. A message you may not have anticipated, yet it arrives just as your heart is regaining its balance, and your spirit is rebuilding from the trials of the past. Someone you once held close, someone who was a central figure in your life, may soon return, seeking to rekindle a connection they once took for granted. But before you open the door to the possibility of reconciliation, your angels urge you to reflect on your journey, your growth, and whether reuniting with this person aligns with the person you have become. This is not a decision to be taken lightly. For your heart was once deeply invested in this relationship. You had given your all, trusted completely, and believed in the promise of a future together. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The love you once shared, so vibrant and full of life, faded into a painful distance. Even though you tried to hold on, your efforts seemed to fall on deaf ears. Now, after all this time, this person has had a change of heart. They've come to realize there's no one else like you, and they are eager to make amends for the mistakes they made. Yet, you must pause and consider, does letting them back into your life honor the person you become through your journey of self-discovery, the early days of love, the promise of forever? In the beginning, the relationship felt magical. You were both so in sync, as if the universe had conspired to bring you together at just the right moment. You trusted them with your whole heart, feeling like you had finally found a partner with whom you could share your dreams and build a life. There was a time when everything felt perfect, the laughter, the joy, the late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. You believed you had found your forever, someone who truly understood you, cherished you, and wanted the same future you did. You built your connection on what you thought was a solid foundation, mutual trust, respect, and love. It felt unbreakable. You shared your deepest hopes and vulnerabilities with them, and in return, they shared theirs with you. The plans you made together seemed so certain. You imagined building a future together, one full of love, success, and shared experiences. You could see yourselves growing old together, still laughing, still dreaming, and still holding each other close. But as with many love stories, the honeymoon phase eventually gave way to the realities of life. Small cracks began to form in the once seamless bond you shared. What started as tiny irritations, things that could easily be overlooked in the early stages, gradually grew into larger frustrations. The relationship, once a source of pure joy, started to feel heavy. The weight of unmet expectations, unspoken needs, and unresolved conflicts began to burden your heart. At first, you brushed it off, convincing yourself that all couples go through rough patches. Every relationship, after all, has its challenges. You believed that these were simply growing pains, moments that would eventually make your connection stronger. You told yourself that the disagreements were normal, that every couple argues sometimes, and that these bumps in the road were just part of building a life together. The shift, when love begins to fade, but something changed in your partner. The light in their eyes began to dim, and the connection that once felt so effortless became strained. It wasn't immediate, and you didn't notice it at first, but over time, their behavior shifted. Where once there had been affection, there was now a cold distance. Where once there had been understanding and patience, there was now frustration and irritation. You noticed the little things first, the way they responded more curtly, the way they stopped asking about your day with genuine interest. They began to withdraw, emotionally and physically. Text messages that once came with warmth and excitement became few and far between, often going unanswered for hours or even days. Phone calls went unreturned, and when you were together in person, it felt like they were somewhere else entirely. Despite your best efforts to address the growing distance, it seemed like nothing you did made a difference. You tried to talk about your concerns, to share your feelings, but your words fell on deaf ears. They became defensive, shutting down any attempt at meaningful conversation. Each time you tried to reconnect, they pulled further away. You began to feel isolated, alone, even though you were still in the relationship. It was a confusing and painful experience, watching someone you loved slip away without understanding why. You questioned yourself constantly, wondering if you had done something wrong, if there was something you could do to fix it. You replayed conversations in your mind, searching for clues about where things had gone wrong. But no matter how much you analyzed it, you couldn't make sense of the shift in your partner's behavior, the breaking point, when silence takes over. Eventually, the emotional distance turned into silence. The small irritations that had once been easily overlooked became insurmountable obstacles. Where there had once been love and laughter, there was now tension and awkwardness. The joy you once felt in each other's presence was replaced by an uncomfortable silence that neither of you knew how to break. It was during this time that you began to feel truly alone. You had invested so much of yourself in this relationship, your time, your energy, your love. You had poured your heart into building a life together, only to watch it slowly unravel before your eyes. Despite your best efforts to reignite the connection, it became clear that your partner was no longer invested. They had emotionally checked out, leaving you to navigate the heartache on your own. The silence between you grew louder with each passing day, until it became unbearable. Every time you reached out, hoping to bridge the gap, you were met with indifference. The love that once flowed so freely was now nowhere to be found. And eventually, you had to face the painful truth. They were pulling away from you, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. The heartbreak, losing the one you loved, when the breakup finally came, it was devastating. Even though you had seen it coming for months, nothing could have prepared you for the pain of losing someone you had loved so deeply. It wasn't just the end of the relationship that hurt. It was the loss of the future you had envisioned together, the dreams you had built, the life you had planned. In the days and weeks that followed, you found yourself in a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, sadness, anger, and disbelief. You couldn't understand how something that had once felt so right could end so painfully. You questioned everything: yourself, your partner, the love you had shared. How had it come to this? How had a relationship that once felt so full of promise turned into a source of so much pain? You went through all the stages of grief, mourning not only the loss of your partner but also the loss of the version of yourself that had existed in that relationship. You had given so much of yourself to someone who ultimately didn't value what they had. And that realization cut deep. In the aftermath of the breakup, you felt broken, emotionally drained and unsure of how to move forward. The roller coaster of emotions was overwhelming, and there were days when it felt like you might never recover. But even in your darkest moments, a small voice inside you, perhaps your angels, whispered that this was not the end of your story. The turning point, rediscovering yourself. As time passed, you began to realize that this painful experience was not just an ending, but also an opportunity for growth. You started to focus on yourself, something you hadn't done in a long time. You poured your energy into healing, into rediscovering who you were outside of the relationship. You began to engage in activities that brought you joy and peace, things that had once been forgotten in the hustle of trying to maintain a relationship that was no longer serving you. At first, the process was slow. Healing, after all, is not linear. There were days when the sadness felt unbearable, when the memories of what had been still haunted you. But with each passing day, you grew stronger. You started to surround yourself with positive influences, friends who uplifted you, activities that inspired you, and moments of solitude that allowed you to reconnect with your inner self. You learned to appreciate your own company, to find peace in being alone rather than feeling lonely. You rediscovered your passions, the things that made you feel alive. You reconnected with your purpose, with the dreams you had for your life that had nothing to do with anyone else, and slowly but surely, you began to heal, a new beginning, the angel's message. Just as you were beginning to find your footing again, your angels brought you an unexpected message. The person who had once abandoned you, who had walked away from the love you offered, was now having a change of heart. After all this time, they had come to realize the mistake they made in letting you go. They had come to understand that the love you gave them was irreplaceable, and they were now seeking reconciliation. But before you let your heart get swept up in the possibility of rekindling what was lost, your angels caution you to reflect on.